your hosts, Rain Carnegie and Britt Loveson.
What's going on, guys and gals and everyone? Welcome to another edition of Part of the Game. We're on episode 6. Your hosts, Rain Rainbow Carnegie.
What's going on, guys?
And Britt Loveson. Be love.
Love, not hate.
Yeah, I'm being loved today.
You are a little bit. I see the love in your eyes.
We started off on a good foot.
We started off on a good foot today, so it's been quite the experience.
So episode 6. Who would have thought we made it this far?
Not me.
You know, after maybe 1 or 2, I thought we were
done.
Cleaning house and see you later. But here we are, episode 6.
And more guests are like choosing yes to be on the show with us.
Yeah, like who?
Did they not watch the first one? Like I don't even know how we got this guest that we have today. But
awesome. Before we talk about who's on the show today, I just want to give another shout out. A couple episodes ago, we gave a nice shout out to one of our sponsors, Sugo Toronto Restaurant. You know, that might be a trend around here right now, supporting local small businesses, right? You know,
so important right now.
Not only is our hockey world in a bit of a mess right now,
a little bit of a pickle, one of your favorite vegetables.
You know, there's a lot of struggling small businesses out there, and you know, restaurants, I think, are taking a bit of a beating.
For sure.
Bit of a
100%,
hit. You know, we're all in this together, but we want you to support your local small businesses. So today we're going to give a nice big shout out to Faro Bar Cafe.
And a round of applause.
Yep. So Faro Bar Cafe, been around since 1993.
Wow.
Family-run restaurant. The Pronestis.
Pronestis.
So Carmen is the father. They have 3 boys running the shop now.
Beautiful.
Dom, Michael, and Charles.
Wow.
You know, they all have a role. One's a cook. One's, host. The other, I don't know what he does, but
looks pretty.
All good guys.
Marketer.
All good guys. Yeah.
Marketer.
So Faro Bar Cafe. I've been going there for years.
I have yet to, show up at that location due to the pandemic, but I can't wait to try it.
Another Italian restaurant.
We like Italian.
I guess I'm old school hockey guy. Likes his carbs, likes his pasta before a big game.
100%.
So, they're doing the Uber Eats stuff and, all the takeouts and stuff. So, yeah, they're at 769 St. Clair West Avenue. If you haven't been to Faro, please go support the boys.
Support them. It's important. We all need to chip in. We all have to. And
sure.
These small businesses and restaurants in particular are going through a difficult time. And when you have such quality, like you've mentioned about Faro, then, why not give it a shot?
Absolutely. But moving along, today we have, a special guest on the show. Every guest is special.
Every guest is special.
I guess it's kind of like...
Some more than others, or are they all equal?
It's kind of like pizza.
Okay.
Even when it's bad, it's still good. So that's kind of how, even if we have a guest, it's always going to be a special guest.
100%.
Because they're taking their time, and we really appreciate that. Yeah.
To talk to
these 2 knuckleheads, and we really appreciate that.
100%.
Today's guest is a player advisor in the hockey world.
Advisor or agent?
Well, we're going to ask him what the difference between
I would love to know. That's a great question.
I would love to know as well. But yeah, he's a big hockey fan. He works for Driven Sports Group. His name's Joseph Giannini. Everyone knows him as Joe Shoes or Just Shoes. And, I've been fortunate to meet him over the last few seasons.
Does he have the Yeezys? Does he have the new Yeezys?
I don't know what kind of shoes he wears.
Does he even
I don't
wear
know why
shoes?
they call him shoes.
Is it like one of those things like, when they call you tiny because you're really large?
You're really big?
Maybe they call him shoes because he never wears them. Wouldn't that be something kind of cool?
We're definitely going to have to find that out. But yeah, so going to our friend Joseph Giannini, Joe Shoes. Joe, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. What did you think of our intro? We've been practicing. You know, we're trying to nail it down.
It's right down my alley. Slapstick humor. I like it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, you heard the question. Your nickname, Shoes.
I still don't know this.
Well, it's funny because I'm not in the shoe business. Believe it or not, there was a shoe store in the city. And when we got married, my wife used to get discounts because we had the same last name, Giannini Shoes. But no, it started off back in, I guess with the 94s. 94s, one of the coaches, you know, he's an Italian guy, and he, you know, Joe's, there's so many Joes, right? So it's like, you know Joe, and the last name, a lot of non-Italians would mangle the name. So you basically call me Joe Shoemaker. And then the next thing you know is they start calling me Shoes. And you know what? It's stuck, and I don't have a problem with it. And it's easy because, you know, for the non-Italians, they'll mangle your last name. You know, if you say, hey, you see Joe, you know, it's like, say Mr. Smith, same kind of thing. So it kind of stuck. But yeah, a funny story on that. When I met the Oshawa owner, Rocco Tullio, about 5 years ago, he would, you know, Joe Shoes. He'd walk by me all the time at rinks, and then he'd, you know, one day he comes up to me and goes, Joe, but I got to ask you, like, you know, Joe Shoes, but, you know, you don't wear good-looking shoes. Like, you just wear normal shoes. You know, do you have shoe store? Like, you don't seem like an aficionado with shoes. I said, no, they just called me for this reason. But he thought, he was convinced that I, you know, like I would wear Ferragamos, and I was a big shoe guy, and it was, no, man, as blue-collar as you get.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Now I know.
So definitely doesn't have a pair of Yeezys then. You definitely don't have a pair of Yeezys.
No, North Star. I got some North Star clogs, but no Yeezys.
That's awesome. So yeah, I've known Joe probably for about, you know, 2 or 3 years now, because he's really close to my coaching staff, Tom Carnevale and Louis Vigilani.
Louis.
So yeah, and I didn't know why his nickname was Joe Shoes. So thanks for sharing that. Now I know the history.
Well, I think you're the first media company that knows it.
There we go.
There we go. Breaking news. Breaking news. Headlines. Read all about it.
And trust me, it's not something to brag about. You know, they call you Shoes because of shoemaker, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Awesome. So let's dive in here. So you're working for Driven Sports Group as a player advisor. What's your kind of like hockey background, and where did it all start?
Well, you know what? I played some, you know, minor hockey, but nothing really competitive. Mainly played soccer. My parents weren't really into that. You know, it started probably about 15, 20 years ago. A couple good friends like Louis and all that would always watch hockey. And I've known Louis, Christ, we used to play soccer when we were 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
So that's going back 30, 39, 40 years. And, you know, I started watching hockey around him. I think it was the 89 was the first year that I started watching minor hockey. I think that was the year just before the Stamkos in that year. So I started watching a lot of hockey. My kids would come out. You know, I had season tickets to the Steelheads. You know, the kids were to be there every Friday, Sunday. It was a good, you know, hobby, a good interest. I watched it a lot. And then after about 7, 8 years, one of the guys I knew asked me to come on board because I was always at the rinks. I knew a lot of the OHL guys because, you know, hanging out with Louis and a lot of the other guys. I got to meet them, and I started with one firm, and, you know, now I'm basically on my 4th firm. I don't like to brag about it, but it's just a couple in between kind of went a little sideways where they just started and stopped quickly. There was some transformation within the company, and, you know, it is what it is. And now I'm with Driven, with Jason, good guy. And he, believe it or not, he was with Momentum Sports. With, you know, God rest his soul, Chris Daigle, one of the agents that unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And you know, one of the funny stories with the agency is, you know, I used to work with an agency, and they, you know, when I left them, you know, Marner goes 3rd overall. Then I worked with an agency and left them, and then Heischer goes 1st overall. And then I was part of an agency that left them, and, you know, Lafreniere goes 1st overall. Oh, wow. So if Jason wants a 1st overall pick, I think I got to leave him.
Oh, my goodness. At least temporarily. You can always come back home, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of those, and like I said, I've worked for 2 or 3 agents, and one was a brief stint, and they're all good people. I say hi to everybody because I believe in this industry. You got to network. You can't burn bridges because you never know where you're going to be tomorrow, right?
For sure. And then so you're with Driven right now as a player advisor. We said we were going to ask you what's kind of the difference from a player advisor and a player agent.
Well, according to the Oxford, like I wouldn't know. Agent is more of a rough, more of a money. Show me the money type. Strictly
like a Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire, Scott Boras, give me the money, I'll make you money, I want a percentage, the sponsorship. Advisor is more the professional political word for agent, more family advisor, more D1 kind of representative. At the end of the day, it's the same thing. There's agents out there that charge for their services, which, by some rules they have to. And then there's other agents that don't. They work on contingencies and commissions. And you know what? We're the latter. If there's a good kid out there and the kid's paying for it, he shouldn't be paying, or secondly, he's probably not that good. So that's the way I kind of equate it. And parents know that, kids know that, if they have to pay for their kid, a lot of times it's for a main goal. Like you want to try to get them a D1 scholarship, trying to help them that way, open up some doors that are not easy in the OHL or Ontario. If it's strictly just to be a pro, most agencies don't charge from what I understand. And then when they charge, they have their set, 3-4%. They make certain percentages on endorsements. So it's pretty lucrative when you have some good players, but it's not easy.
So you actually brought up something that we kind of wanted to talk about too.
Brought up a few things that we kind of wanted
to sure. But we'll start with, you mentioned the college route. What kind of is the deciding factor from, if you're going for pros, is it more like skill? Like if you have the skill for the pros, that's where you're going. If you kind of need a little more time to develop and, hone in on your skills, do you kind of go to the college route, hopefully get a scholarship and, try and slide into the NHL that way? Because as we're seeing now, a lot of good players are coming out of the States there. From, Boston College, Wisconsin, all those programs are pumping out some really good players. Is it kind of based on, how ready a player is?
Well, there used to be 10, 15 years ago, and Rain, you could probably talk about it, that back then they, if a kid wasn't big enough, strong enough, they'd say you go the college route to, you mature. OHL is basically 4 years and out, the CHL. Nowadays, the game has changed. There's a lot more smaller guys, skilled guys. Even in last year's OHL draft, the first round, I think 15 of the 20 were under 5'9.5". And, Rain, you could probably look at that. That's unheard of. Back then, if you were under 6 feet, you probably never got drafted in the first round.
Or drafted at all.
Exactly. So the game has changed. It used to be size, speed, smarts, strength. Now it's basically speed, skill, smarts, skating. The S's. D1, I have kids that are, 95, 98 students and they want to go the school route, but they don't know what to do. At the end of the day, some of them say, after 4 years, I want to know if I can play this game or not. If I can't, I take my OHL, CHL package and I go get an education. And then you get other kids that want the D1 environment, the atmosphere. The parents have a lot of money, resources, so they want to go that route. What's better? You get the college guys that say it's better. You get the CHL guys say that that's better. From my experience, elite players are elite players. They will play in the NHL, and those elite players rarely play in college. Maybe 1 year and they're out. The Werenskis, the Trubas, guys like that. They go 1 year just to hold until the NHL team says, come back. And so that college is just a symbol for them. The OHL guys, the McDavids, the Marners, they play their 3 years OHL and then they're out, or 2 years or 4 years, and they're in the pro league. So in that situation, the elite players, you really can't discuss. When it comes to other fringe players, I look at the numbers. Out of Ontario, I don't know if you even have 1 or 2 people every year that sign after 4 years of D1, a pro contract. And these are kids that might be 22, 23 years old. You get kids that went through the CHL that are 22, 23. They might be 2-3 years of a pro already. So it just depends, right? A lot of the college kids that come out of school, I think, are more from the U.S. because their development leagues like the USHL and the NAHL are pretty good. But the USHL is a holding spot for the D1. You know, the OHL, if you're going to D1 from Ontario, you know, you got to wait until you're 18. Some of them go to BCHL, the CCHL, because the OJ doesn't have a great reputation. And then they might go to the USHL. But you got to be careful. You know how many kids that play with the OJ teams, and I know friends that coach OJ teams where they put up big numbers and they had scholarships, and then they go to the USHL and they get exposed, and all of a sudden they get pushed back, their entrance. You know, be careful what you wish for. Like I said, the elites, you don't have to worry about it. There's also the parents. If parents have a lot of money like they do nowadays and they're resourceful and their kids have an education, they're going to say, listen, this hockey thing is a pipe dream. So you know what? You might as well just catch up with the rest of the people your age and get an education. And that becomes a dilemma. I've seen very good kids that are a good potential to be pros because they come from a very educated family and they have the resources. They kind of give it up and follow the parents rather than following the dream. If you have kids that are in rural areas that don't have a lot of money, they don't want to go to school. So at the end of the day, they might say, I'm going to hold on to my hockey dream longer than others. You know, there's a lot that comes into play, and maybe I'm overthinking things, but there is a lot. It's not easy. Parents will ask me, what do you think? I said, listen, until you're presented with something, you don't know. You may want to go D1 and the OHL team wants to sign you to a great package. Or you might want to go OHL, and then all of a sudden, you know, you go to the showcase in September and you got 10 full scholarships, and you might want to go D1. Mm-hmm. Until you're presented with something, you don't know. It's good to keep your options open. We believe that, you know, when we talk to a lot of OHL teams, we don't lie. You know, they ask us, is your kid going to report? We tell the kid and the parents, if you say you're going to report, that means you go to camp, and if they like you and they want to sign you, you sign. Because if that doesn't happen, then they pull stunts. It doesn't look good with the organization, the agency. Now, you know, if a kid gets drafted 7th or 8th round, there's really no implication on that kid or the parents. You know, if you're going to go 2nd round, 1st round, or 3rd round, the team is invested. And I believe that, you know, you've given us somewhat of a commitment. A lot of people might say, no, that means nothing. Parents change their mind. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be honest and upfront. You know, and I've heard some stories out there where people, you know, this guy's going to school, and then all of a sudden he ends up on a top-rated team. Wow. You know, it happens, and that's just part of the ugly part of the business, but it happens to a lot of people or a lot of teams. And is it calculated? Probably not sometimes, but does it happen? Yes.
So Joe, you touched on a lot of great points, you know, and one of the things that you touched upon was the socioeconomic factor. You know, low-income households choosing maybe that pro route that you see a lot in the NBA where, you know, before they implemented you had to go NCAA, you had a lot of kids that went from high school straight to pro because of their upbringing, right? And I was no different. You know, here I went to Upper Canada College. I was fortunate enough to have that experience, but I grew up Jane and Finch, and we talked about that. But one of my motivating factors for going to the OHL was I thought I was drafted in the 1st round. I thought 2 years, I'm going to be a millionaire. If I'm drafted in the 1st round in the O, for sure I'm going to get drafted in the 1st round in the show. Like, Mom, we're about to make it, you know? Like, you know, but going through my 5-year career, both in the O and the Quebec Junior Hockey League, you know, you have those dreams, you have those visions. Looking back on everything, and it's funny that you mentioned this, like, I wish I had opportunities to go NCAA. You know, had I maintained a certain mark and did well on the SATs, there were schools that were talking to me as a 1st rounder. Joe knows, you know, you get a lot of attention from not just agents and advisors and scouts. It's everywhere, right? Looking back on it now, I wish I would have went NCAA and accepted one of those offers that I had, you know, because I feel, for me, you know, looking back on it, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's also can be a nightmare. You know, the advantage of being in those environments and also getting that education. You know, when I look at it, Joe, and tell me if I'm wrong, and everybody's different, I think, as well. You know, you go when you go to the NCAA D1 route, you know, it's looked at as a student athlete. When you go to junior, where you don't know what high school you're going to, right? It's like the focus is that team that has drafted and acquired you. Similarly, your focus is for hockey if you go and get a scholarship or whatever, but I think that the mindset that a lot of people have, I know I certainly did, was student athlete NCAA, to Joe's point, low income family, pro, junior.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not thinking about school.
Yeah.
But I wish, and I think back when I was going through it, Joe, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever it was, you know, there wasn't a focus like there is now on education back then. Like when you were in the CHL, it was like junior, pro.
Yes.
The package that you got, you know, who was literally looking at the package? You're just like junior, pro. But now I think, maybe you can talk about this, Joe, is that something that you're noticing with your junior families that you're doing junior contracts with and advising them on? Is that something that's really important to them? Because it wasn't so important to me in the moment. It's just like, yeah, okay, cool package, whatever. Don't care. I'm going to be in the NHL in 2 years anyway, right? But is that something that now families that go the junior route are caring more about?
They're like, listen, they always think plan B. If their kid doesn't make it, you know, at the end of the day, believe it or not, I tell my kids, I hope you never use your school package, your OHL, because that means you sign a pro contract. So you'll have enough money to pay your own. But at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they get a package. And the OHL package, the CHL package, it's pretty good. It's guaranteed. You know, you can start at 18 months after your OA year. They can't take it away from you. You hear some horror stories about D1, which I don't agree with. The D1s are great. But, you know, people want to go D1. But remember, you have to have a dance partner. If nobody offers you that D1 scholarship, it doesn't matter what you wish for, you're not going. Secondly, you know, they might offer you a 2-for-4 deal rather than a full ride. You know, it's good to go up to a parent that's got resources. Yeah, I'll take it. But what about someone that doesn't have the resources? Are you going to say, we'll pay 2 of your 4 years? And by the way, the other 2 years are going to cost you 120 US.
Right.
They might not be able to afford that. So all of a sudden their dreams of, yeah, we want to go D1, but, you know, we can't afford that. You know, they may look at D3, but, you know, and then you get some kids that, you know, they go to Ivy League schools like Harvard. Christ, if you go to Harvard and you get a 4-year degree out of there, I think hockey is maybe a demotion. Like, you know, guys coming out of Harvard, you could write your own ticket. You know, you're playing in the NHL, riding buses for $500,000, $1 million. They might think, you know what, I'm not going there. You know, I'm kind of, you know, exaggerating a little bit, but that's the case. If you come out of Harvard with a degree for 4 years, you know, you could almost write your ticket anywhere. But yeah, the parents they want the packages. They want to know that there's a backup plan. They want to know it's guaranteed. And like I said at the beginning, do you care whether your kid goes to school? The Canadian university program is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. If you don't care whether they get education in the States or Canada, then stay in Canada. If you care and you want the US, there's a specific program, a specific school, you want to go there, you have the resources, great. You just need to make sure you get this D1 scholarship that you're looking for. You know, there's a lot of people that go on the boards, they're committed to this school, committed to that school. Doesn't mean they got a scholarship. They just committed a spot. A lot of those guys might be paying their own way. Wow. It doesn't say committed with a scholarship. You know, it just says committed. And you hear the horror stories. There's some like the Ivy Leagues, they don't really give you scholarships. They give you subsidy. And if you're going to go there, most of the time, the parents have a lot of money, so they're probably not getting subsidy. You know, and that's my basic question is we see what's offered to you. And secondly, if it's offered to you, is it something that you can handle? And thirdly, do you care if it's Canadian or US? You know what I mean? Some kids can handle it, some kids can't. And, you know, if you're going to be living in Canada the rest of your life, you know, there's nothing wrong with a degree from Queens or U of T or even York or where. There's nothing. Like it's great. And you know what? I've had, like I said, I've had some solid educational kids that have gone to private schools growing up, and they said, I want to know at the age of 20 if I can play this game. If I can't play and sign pro, then I get my school package from the CHL, and I move on with my life. 4 years and you're out. Some people, they want to delay the inevitable and try to go a little longer, which is fine. But you know how it is, Rainey. You don't start playing in D1 until and forget about the elites. You don't start playing until you're 2021. So all of a sudden you get drafted at 15, 16. You gotta
pay your dues.
You gotta play, and I don't want to sound stupid, you gotta play subpar hockey for 3 years. You're not playing against the best level competition. You know, you might be playing junior A, which is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not the highest level.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to the USHL, which is a higher level. It's equivalent to the OHL, which they say. But, you know, if you're a Canadian going to the USHL, you might not get the look, the love. You might get exposed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of kids, if you look at it, the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of kids that have gone, that were, you know, heroes in junior A in Canada, and they went down south, and it hasn't really worked.
Who's that kid? Really good player. I think he was in contention to go first overall with Ty Nelson, but he ended up getting drafted later on.
Fantilli.
Didn't he go over to the USHL with Chicago Steel?
Yeah, he's playing prep. He played prep with his brother. You know, he's a treat. He's a good kid. He's great. You know, believe it or not, with the 04, with the 03s, the best players on the ice were 04s.
Right.
You know, you had Shane Wright and you had Fantilli. And remember, Fantilli's a late December birthday. Mm-hmm. So he's going to go in the NHL draft with the 05s.
Wow.
So this kid's got 2, 3, exactly. So, you know, he's committed. He can go anywhere he wants. You know, Saginaw drafted him, and, you know, London, Kitchener, they all had chances at him, and they passed. Right. So that would maybe mean that, you know, the kid's for real and the parents, and he doesn't want to come to the O. Saginaw took a chance on them. Hopefully it works for Saginaw because they're good people. Yeah. But, you know, it's hard to commit to a first round and then they don't show. Right. But yeah, Fantilli, he's you know, he's all world. He can play. He's really, really good. His older brother Luca's really good too, and I think he went to the prep. He got drafted, I think, by Niagara. You know, good defenseman. But yeah, you're gonna have, you know, Shane Wright might be first pick overall 2004, and then you might have, you know, Fantilli that would be first pick overall 2005. And he's, you know, I think he's with Brisson. So Pat Brisson, you know, he's big in the industry for a reason. And we'll talk about some of the agencies moving forward, but he knows what to do. You know, they know what they have to do, and they know the proper development for the kids. So I don't think that family has to worry about anything.
So we jumped ahead a little bit. We're talking about, you know, older kids getting drafted and stuff. But, you know, we're hoping a lot of our viewers could be kind of educated on some things. And I think a big thing is, you know, what age does an agency or, you know, a parent start kind of looking for an advisor or an agent, right? Like, what age would you say that, like...
And how does it also work? You know, like, I have families, especially right now in the times that we're in, you know, how do you go and evaluate new prospective representation? You know, what does that look like? But in terms of, you know, do parents have to reach out to agencies and advisory firms now to, you know, or is it still the traditional world? The agencies and the advisory teams see something or hear something they like and they make contact with that family. Is that still the norm?
Yeah, that's, you know, like the elites are elites. They're scouted from 10, 11 years old. And the big players usually go after them and get them. And you know what? Because there's so much money in hockey, that's why they're looking at minor Bantam and even earlier than that, which is, you know, it's, when I started in this and, you know, the first 5, 6 years, it's hard to get guys because they don't know you. The parents got to trust you. So it's like they refer that you get beer league guys. And then after that, once you start getting a little bit of a reputation and you start knowing people, you start, you know, improving the quality of your stable. But McDavid's, guys like that, they're always ahead of the crowd, the group. They got agents from early on, Byfield's, guys like that. If you're a good player and you can play, they will come after you. A kid in Bantam, even entering into Bantam, if he's a really good player, he's already had 7 or 8 agents reach out. Some, you know, go straight to the kid and the parent. I like to, you know, call the coach or email the coach and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm interested in a couple of your kids. You mind if you pass my information to them or give them mine or give me theirs with their permission so that you're on board with them. And a lot of coaches are pretty good. They give you that information. I'll pass it on because they don't really have a vested interest. They want to help their kids along. And then you get some coaches that won't because maybe they have affiliations with other agents and you know, they want to keep things under wrap. So if I really want a kid and a certain kid I want to target and I don't hear back from a coach after a week or two, then I go to the arenas and, nice and subtly and professionally, I ask, who is Mr. So or Mrs. So-and-so, and I go up to him and introduce myself and, say, hey, this is who I'm at. I'd love to have a coffee and chat and go from there. But yeah, I used to start scouting at the beginning of minor midget because I want to see a kid almost fully grown just to see where they're at. A lot of agents take kids at minor bantam and they're the best in the loop, and then you know how it is. 2 years later, they haven't grown. Everybody's bigger, stronger, faster, and they've gone backwards. The elites are still the elites. But yeah, now, you have no choice sometimes to go and bantam. Like the kid we were talking about before, I'm representing the older brother and we had him in minor, in minor bantam and bantam and in minor midget. So you got the family, and the other kid is he's a minor bantam at the time, but we don't really spend a lot of time with the younger kids because it's awkward too for the parents and the kids when you're at a young age. We don't want to stuff them. We don't want to, make them feel so awkward. We want to give them their space, and, we don't want to throw them off their game. Some kids can handle it and they love it, and some kids don't. And trust me, I would love for every kid to have an agent or an advisor, because after a game, when they come out, it's nice for them to talk to someone. It feels good. I wish they can all, but you can't. And even our firm, we're smaller. We don't want to saturate. There's guys out there that say, they take 5 or 6 guys and they really take 20. They don't want to tell everybody. I like to take 3 or 4 because it's a lot of work. Like, you got to work with these guys. You go watch, and I watch maybe 50% of their games, and I do mainly the ETA where there's a lot more driving. Your phone's always open. You're always answering questions. And then you got to worry about the season. Prepare the draft. After the draft, you got to worry about summer hockey, training. You got to worry about where they're going to be playing in September. Is it junior A? Is it midget? Is it going to be the OHL? You got to work contracts. It's 12 months. So if you got 10, 12 kids, it's a lot of work, and there used to be the notion that, agents would go out and pick 15 guys, and whoever would stick after draft day, they would keep. You know what I mean? They would lose numbers. I don't like to do that. When I commit to a kid, I'm in for the long haul. I don't leave them. They either leave me or they leave the game because they're done. They finished the OHL. It's agent is like a tree farm. You pick them up in minor bantam, you plant the seed. 5, 6 years later, you could sell the tree, or you might make some money from the kid when he's 20, 21. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hours. And my wife says that, she goes, "You're out of the house 40 hours a week. I don't see a check." You know what I mean? I said, "Don't worry, it's coming.
It's in the mail. It's in the mail."
Yeah, so the kids, there's kids that come out. Look at kids like, Cirelli. He didn't get drafted, overlooked, walk on, junior A, from all the stories I hear. OHL, Oshawa. Next thing you know, he's, MVP Memorial Cup, 3rd round pick, making $5 million a year. Good for him. And this is a kid that, from the stories I hear, I didn't know him. I know a good buddy of mine used to coach him, but he was playing AA, I think, up until Bantam or minor Bantam. Then he went up to minor midget, and great for the kid. Those are the stories that I like to hear. Those are the type of kids I like to get. The blue-collar kids, the ones that, work out. It's funny because a lot of people say, well, you know what, your stable's not great. It's pretty easy to know who the best players in the game are. It's a different story to represent them. You know what I mean? If I'm Mark Guy and I'm, Brisson, I can go up to anyone, the best, and say, come with me. I'll take you on my private jet. I'll show you the offices. You want to sign with us? But if you're Joe Shoes, there's only so much you can.
Where's the jet?
Yeah, exactly. A little model. There's only so much you can do. So at the end of the day, we may be looking at 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Sometimes we have to be realistic. We like to get 1st rounders, but it's not always the case. And even like you said, 1st rounders doesn't mean they're gonna play pro. You know how many 1st rounders never? But there's a lot of them, and you go back every year. How many of them 2 years later out of hockey? And this is the unfortunate thing. And Jason's been around longer, and he's got more contacts. And you know what? Sometimes it's just identifying that diamond in the rough. That gets me going. I like to find that middle round guy that can be a pro. And remember, I'd love for him to be a $10 million player. But if you got 10 guys at $1.5 million, $15 million at 4%, that's 600 US a year the firm takes. It's not bad. You know what I mean? Not bad.
So we're gonna say, like, what I found interesting, what you were saying is some agencies are looking at players, 11, 12 years old, and from what you said, it could be you don't want to put that much pressure, and it's a little awkward for the someone being that age. But like, is there any kind of rules or regulations against going after kids at certain ages? Like, I know in soccer, for instance, Lionel Messi, when he's like 8 years old, he signed to Barcelona. And, in the hockey world, is there anything that is like prohibits or rules or regulations from like a certain age where you can't, get a player to sign with your agency?
Well, you know what? You really don't sign. See, that's the funny thing is you don't sign anything. The kid, until he's 18 years old, is not really considered an adult, so he can't really sign. There's nothing enforceable. So you can have a kid for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you lose him on the steps of the NHL draft.
Wow.
It can happen because you don't sign. With Lionel Messi, it's different because you're talking about all-world money.
Yeah.
Barcelona, these guys got billions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in Canadian. There's a lot of money in Canadian hockey, but at the end of the day, you can't sign a kid 8 years old. It just, it's frowned on. And when we say kids are, like, you can't sign things. Kids 11 years old might be early, but you hear all these phenom stories out there. The next great one and all that. Crosby, McDavid. They probably knew behind the scenes who they had, but they don't express it. There's some kids, and I don't want to mention names, like they had 3 agents before they even got into minor midget. You know what I mean? So things change.
I had 2.
So, well, you had 2, and you know what? They hit them from minor bantam or even earlier. Because you get a guy that, like a Connor McDavid at $12.5 million, you get in, and sometimes you get people that, don't have to be the biggest firm or the best firm to get these guys. Sometimes it's just a close friend, someone that and there's examples out there where you can live off of one good friend that's made it in the NHL, and it doesn't take much, and but I like the good stories. It's like I said, even if you had 10 guys at $1 million each, which is basically almost base salary, that's $10 million, that's $400,000 to the firm US plus some endorsements and all. That's not bad.
Yeah.
And the maintenance with them, phone calls, go see them, it's fine. I don't really tend with the NHL portion of it. That's what Jason does. He's the NHLBA. We have a scout in the States too that deals with a lot of D1 and guys out there. I mainly stay at the junior level, the OHL, a little bit of D1. There's only so much you could do. This is not my full-time gig, but I do spend 30, 40 hours a week. And, my main goal is to get the kids their school packages, so that at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, at least you feel good that they save themselves $40,000-$50,000. If it doesn't work.
Sorry to interrupt.
And that's my goal. And like I said, no one will ever fire me because I cost them too much or I charge too much, because you can't pull zero from zero, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the goal.
And how you talk about these athletes, you hope to get 10 at $1 million to form a little stable. How difficult is it to if you only choose 2 or 3? You mentioned you try to get 3 or 4 players per year. How difficult when there's so many to choose from? How do you zone in on the guy, the gal, like?
And if you do zone in on that,
how do you secure it?
How cutthroat is it? Like, how many other agencies are on that same person that you kind of zoned in on?
Well, Mark, who was it? Mark Guy used to say 20, 25 years ago, they'd go into the OHL Cup and you're lucky if 1 or 2 players had an agent. Now, 2 years before the OHL Cup, everybody good has got an agent. Toronto's the center of the hockey universe. I don't care what anybody says. That's the per capita, most agents, even if they're not from here, they come, they have big players here. But you have big agents, big areas. You got New England area, you got Michigan, you got Chicago, St. Louis, California, you got Florida, you got out west. You got so many good areas with so many big agents that have, people working for them in these areas. And if, like I said, it doesn't take, a big guy like a Brisson or a Newport or Bobby Orr to just say, I want to go see this kid in Europe, or I want to see this kid in the western part of the Canada, and all they have to do is just get a call from one of the big wigs, and yeah, we're interested. We won't make a decision yet. Lately, what I've seen, the Ontario faction of the NHL draft has been, taking a beating lately. It seems like a lot of more players in the NHL draft are coming from Europe. There's a lot more, 20 years ago, a lot of people wouldn't take chance on, Eastern Bloc countries and their players because you don't know if they would come. Now they all come. There's a lot of money in it. The U.S., the amount of participation in the NHL from the U.S. is huge. Look at the draft, I think last year with Jack Hughes, what was it, 17 guys in the first round, or 17 guys off that national development team, went first 2 rounds. But it's so hard. It's so competitive, even just for a stat. I went through it yesterday, the 97 loop, which I think is one of the best, second to the 85s. We'll leave it at that. I looked at it just in Ontario kids. Like when you get drafted, it's one thing. When you sign your entry level, it's fine. It's great. You get a bit of bucks. But usually we tell our kids, until you sign your second deal, you really haven't made it. Mm-hmm. You know how many kids in that high octane Ontario 97 draft, I think I looked at, signed second contracts?
Wow. How many?
And remember, a second contract doesn't mean a $10 million contract.
Yeah.
Second contract can be a 3-year at $4 million, 4.5.
How many?
15.
Wow.
15. So if you got 15 guys in Ontario that sign a second contract, and you got 100 agents, right, and you got the biggest agents that are swallowing at least 2 each, 1, 2, 3 each, what does that tell you? It's not easy. It's if you can get one guy a year that's paying the bills, it's good. And I've known a lot of good agents that are not huge, that are mid-sized, and you think, oh my God, these guys are been around, they're making a ton of money, and then you look at it, they might only have 9 guys in the NHL. 9 guys.
So you say, 15 guys signed second deals.
Yeah.
The top guys get 1, 2 of the 15, so there's not a lot for a smaller boutique firm to choose from. How do you compete with the Pat Brissons and the Bobby Orrs and the Darren Ferrises of the world? How do you get yourself a sliver of the pie?
You hope that you get lucky and you build a stable, or you get the one guy that opens up doors for others. And it's hard because, a lot of times they say, yeah, you get a top guy and you might lose him just before the draft to the vultures. And there's people out there that say it's easier to steal a kid than to recruit him. And it happens. Wow. It happens to a lot of people. I don't want to say the word cutthroat, but it's very, very competitive. It goes on, and I can't compete against the bigger guys, even the mid guys. If they want to take my guys, and my guys get allured with grandeurism and this and that, what am I going to do?
So what's the difference then, Joe? Like, what's the difference between you and Pat Brisson and Bobby Orr and Darren? Like I know, besides they've been there, they've done it, they've had all these guys that they've represented, right? Besides that, take that away. Like, the role of an agent isn't what you've done for the guy next to you. The role of an agent and an advisor is what can you do for that person, that player, that athlete, right? Well, to me, it's when I'm looking at an advisor, when I was looking for an advisor, and one of the reasons why I went from one of the biggest advisors, I was with IMG, with Gus Badali was my first agent. He was also the first agent of Wayne Gretzky, and that's why I was like, Wayne Gretzky, you're his first agent? Yeah, I went with Gus, Shout outs to Gus, love Gus. But then, I was a kid that, chasing the money, low income family. And unfortunately I had to, make a decision for my career that I thought was best in hindsight, looking back on it. Gus, I messed up. Sorry. Should have stayed with you. But one of the things that I wanted was, I didn't want to be like, I was skating with Bobby Orr, and they had Nathan Horton, Eric Stahl, Anthony Stewart, one of my childhood friends. And I was just like, well, I'm not the same stature as these guys, so like Bobby Orr's not going to have any time for me, right? So, and Gus was coming out of retirement, and he's just like, I was like, yeah, that's the guy. Yeah. Wayne Gretzky, Eric Lindros, Paul Coffey, that's who I want,
Well, remember, they're big too because they're able to lure the guys. They have a great stable. A lot of people look at that, but they also get the job done. Like let's call a spade a spade. I might go in with X player and or our firm, and we might be able to get $6-7 million because we know how to negotiate comparables and all that. They might go in and get $9 million because they know how to do it. They've done it longer. They have more leverage. They got more guys in the NHL. They got more, and a lot of that is, I'm sure it happens. Hey, listen, if you want these guys, let's work with this guy. So they're big and they're good for a reason. It's not smoke and mirrors. And everybody hears the stories about Brisson starting and all that. And you know what? He's been a god, in this industry. They all have. Newport's, Bobby Orr's, they're big for a reason. And some look at quality more than quantity. With us, the kid on the ice, like sometimes the kid doesn't even need an agent. Yep. Ovechkin, there's a lot of guys that sign their own deals. If they're top end, they get top money. But the agent does a lot of the stuff more than just negotiate contract. They do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And you know what? We hope to get, when you're starting off, you get a couple of guys, you start making a stable, and then other guys start looking at that. And, wouldn't you rather be skating, like you said, with the Thorntons and, the Marners, the McDavids, the Matthews, rather than, with Joe Schlepp and Joe Shoes, right?
And Rain and Breton.
Yeah, and me.
Exactly.
So as coaches, and Rain's a first-year head coach for the Young Nats, 08.
What's up, boys?
And, I've been with Tom and, working under their wing for a bit with Richmond Hill and stuff. But as coaches, we face a lot of the time, some parents will come to us and say, that was a great skate at tryout. That was awesome. Yeah, we're with you guys. We want to play for your team. Lo and behold, a week later, we find out they went and skated with, another organization, and the parent who just committed to us a week later had just decommitted to us, and we face that a lot, I want to know kind of, Joe, do you face those, you've actually touched on that already, that you do face those challenges, but, how much more, is it a
rampant thing?
Does
it happen often where you've invested in this family and this athlete, and then out of the blue, they're no longer a part of your stable?
Has it happened to you personally a lot?
To me, it's happened. I've lost some kids, and you know what? I still talk to the parents. I don't believe in calling them names or doing anything like that, because you never know what happens down the road. You know what I mean? It's always good, and I believe good people get good things happening to them. It's hard with some kids. Some kids, the parents, they just love it. They appreciate you. They warm up to you, and they know that they can get maybe a bigger agent, but they want someone that could spend the time, and then I laid on the line, and a couple of kids I've had recently where the parents said, hey, we had these other agents come, but Joe's always been there. He's told us the way it is. It's black and white. And if my kid can make it under his wing or his company's wing with someone else, there's not going to be a difference. But they wanted the mentoring. And then there's other kids that, don't need to see their agent. I go to a lot of, I had a couple kids last year on a team, or one kid, I think I went to see 30 of his games last year between tournaments and all that. And I maybe saw one other agent during those 30 games at those games. So you're thinking, we're the agents to these kids. They like you said, Bobby Orr, these guys are bigger. They watch them maybe at tournaments. They can't watch them every now and then. With me, I have smaller stables, so I'm able to. But if I get bigger and I got 20, 30 guys, 10 in the pros and here, and I got to go all over the place, you can't watch as much minors. So you might have other guys helping you out. But yeah, it's not good when you lose someone, especially when you put time and effort. You can't really collect anything because you really don't sign a contract. It kind of sucks because it's almost like a, beat down on your character, especially if they go to someone else that you think, what, you know what I mean? It's just, it's not good. I'm lucky to get good parents. And when I talk to the kids and the parents, I always say, listen, if we're going to be in a 5, 6, 7, 10-year relationship, we better see eye to eye. Your kid, me, your parents, if you have any question, you call me, you tell me what's on your mind. I don't like to go with, delusional or crazy parents. Unfortunately, you hear some of them, they have the best kids in the NHL, right? It's just unfortunate, but, and there's stories, one of my good friends, his kid's in the NHL, big player on the Leafs. And, there was always knocks about the family and that, but, the family's great. The kid's a hockey rat. It's just people sometimes take shots at kids or parents just because of jealousy, no other reason. You know, you hear stories about the kid in Chicago, you know, had issues growing up. But you know what? Everybody who's not guilty of some issues. Oh, everybody has some kind of faults. And like I said at the beginning, if someone wants to start throwing muck and sewering you, they can do it. You can't prevent against that. There's a lot of, you know, measures in place with the OHL, the CHL, D1, NHL, where they now, especially nowadays, mental awareness, you know, discrimination, where you prevent against that, and you don't want to see that. You want to, you know, I want to be upfront with parents. I want them to know this is what you see, this is who you get. We can get the job done. If you're comfortable with me, let's go. And sometimes my market is a little bit different than the markets of, say, Bobby Orr, Newport, Brisson. They can get whoever they want. I can try and get whoever I want, but in a realistic world, not going to happen.
Don't
even
sell yourself short.
Yeah,
maybe if you had nicer shoes.
Yeah, that was it. Maybe if I had Ferragamo shoes, maybe I'd be able to get them. But no, listen, you make efforts, and sometimes kids, like we've had chances where kids, first round kids, don't get taken up until halfway through minor midget. It happens. One of the 98s is one of my neighbors, and we tried to go after him and ban him, and he wanted to come with us, but my agent at the time was not a fan and didn't want him and this and that. And next thing you know, is at least he's playing AHL hockey, making money, got drafted. So it's unfortunate. You wish you could take more kids than you can. And remember, there's no signs. The McDavids are the McDavids. But even you get a kid like, number 16 on the Leafs, even up until we got drafted, a lot of people didn't think he was going to play in the NHL. Wasn't big enough. Wasn't strong enough.
I'm so happy that, sorry to cut you off, I'm so happy Arizona took Dylan Strome, like, hell of a player, but I was like, yes, Marner's coming to the Leafs.
Right?
Well, at the end of the day, and it's not just Marner, it's like anybody else, you love these good stories. And kids that are, the difference between him, okay, never mind the skill and all that, but McDavid, a lot of these guys, Crosby's, they give it 150% all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's the main difference. It's about this. It's about heart. We were looking at it, the 94 loop with my friend, when Louis was coaching. We see a couple guys in the NHL. We're thinking, holy smokes, these guys weren't even great players back then, and they're in the NHL. Mm-hmm. It just, what? And remember, there's no bad NHL player. To be in the NHL, you know how hard it is? Mm-hmm. It's like saying, that's an ugly Ferrari. There is no ugly Ferrari. Give me any color you want. Give me green. Give me yellow. You know what I mean? To make it in the NHL, Rain, is it easy?
No, it is not.
That's right.
No, it is not. It's the best of the best.
One out of 10,000, and it's very unfortunate. I wish, like I said, you get one or two, and then you build a stable, and then I could be 5 years, every week on this podcast without you worrying about work. Right?
So you're talking about a lot of competition and stuff, right? And, trying to find your own players, and then maybe they get gobbled up by a bigger, agency. I won't say better, but just someone who's more, out there, who've been doing it a long time. But I don't know if you heard of Rachel Luba in the Major League Baseball scene. She's just over 30 years old.
Yep.
And so she runs her own little agency thing. And she kind of has a different approach at, signing contracts and deals with her players. They call it the a la carte deal. So she basically lays out, this is what we're going to charge you for and our percents on all this. But she allows her players or her clients to look at that, menu and pick which ones they actually want. So basically, they're paying for what they get.
Pay per use.
Pay per use, right? And she's been doing great. I think she just signed, got a huge deal for Trevor Bauer, a pitcher for the LA Dodgers. It was the biggest offseason signing. Hell of a pitcher. Yep. But do you think, is that a way that you could kind of, jump into the market and battle with, the Scott Borases, like you mentioned, like she has to deal with? And
I'm surprised.
Is that a different way of doing things for agencies? Will they start adopting that method?
Well, like I said at the onset, any good player or elite player will have 10 agents after them. So they don't have to pay for anything. That's why I'm surprised that if Rachel Luba's got a guy like Bauer, why would he even want to pay for anything? Because he can go to the next guy and get everything without paying for anything. He could have got the $40 million with Boris or someone else without paying for it. I could see it with the fringe type players that you wanted, longer projection, development, like D1 type hockey players where it's going to take time, where you charge for your services. I see that. But, imagine going to Connor McDavid and say, okay, tell me what you want to pay for. I'll provide you that service. He's going to say, why pay for it? I'm not paying for anything. They get everything they want. So I don't know how that would work in hockey. I don't know much about this Rachel Luba's situation, but I'm kind of surprised that Bauer.
I think what her model is. I think it's, let's say that the overall compensation is 4% on the services that a traditional agency would be charging their athletes. What she's saying is, with that 4%, I offer these 10 things.
Okay, or maybe she's reduced.
So she's reducing.
Yeah.
So they're not actually paying for it. They're just
Yeah.
her commission.
Like if the client says, okay, out of those 10 things, I only want 5. She says, okay, let's readjust that percent.
From 4
so she
to 2
kind
or
of does
whatever it is.
like we said, the a la carte example,
Well, with me, and I've mentioned it to a couple of guys. If I had to open up my own agency, I would basically do it as a player-owned agency, where I keep the 51%. And the other 49% is split up amongst my horses. So at the end of the day, they get a percentage. The firm makes a percentage when they're making, and if they get out of hockey, then you move it on to someone else that you get in. But at least they know that, going forward, they could always have a percentage of this agency if they've kicked in. So that's a selling thing to parents. Parents down the road might think, what, if my kid could, look at, the Cavaliers, the Thorntons. A lot of brother combos in the agency business, and you know what? It helps. If you have an ownership in it, that's a selling feature. Some parents might go with it if they got a couple kids and they said, yeah, after hockey, we want them to have a percentage in the agency. Doesn't hurt. You know what I mean?
Equity.
And listen, I'd rather take 50% of X than 0 of X.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, Joe. Like that's actually another way, to kind of remodel an agency. Because I know, her competition, they're not to say they're not happy, but she is kind of changing the game a little bit by, maybe taking some, percentages out of other agencies' pockets, because they're like, wait a minute. We could go with Rachel Luba, who's not charging us the full 4%.
But this is to Shu's point earlier.
Yeah.
She might be able to get $10 million deal, whereas Boraz might be able to get $13 million. So maybe the selling feature there is still, hey, you can go with this woman who's compressing margins right now, essentially.
Yeah.
Or you can stay with me at our regular rate. And this is what I used to do on Bay Street too, right? Like you're going to pay a premium because we're at the top of the game and we know what we're doing, right? As opposed to a smaller boutique firm that's like, here's the honeymoon rate.
Yeah.
Let's get you in and build a staple around you. It'd be nice to know, what do the players that she represents underneath Mr. Bauer, if they have the same deal that Mr. Bauer has?
I think she got Yasiel Puig, the Cuban player, who's really good as well. And, to your point, Bauer got over $300 million, so I think she did a pretty good job, right?
Well, and listen, whether it's Jason Harshaw's head of our guy, or whether it's Bobby Orr or Brisson and all that, they try as hard for the top guys. We do. We try for the hard guys if we can, unless they're already taken or spoken for. We've done that. And when it comes to talking with general managers in the NHL and trying to get the best deal, we do that. He does that, and I would assume he's good at it, because it's starting off and it's slowly developing into a good stable. But to say that the bigger guys that have been around 20, 30 years don't have a little bit of a leverage or an advantage or a clout, credibility behind them would be naive. I think that's there. Never mind, Bobby Orr, what he's done in the NHL, he's a god. And then, Jeff Jackson and Giannini and those guys that are working from, they work hard. They put a lot of times at the rinks. And you know what, the top end guys, why wouldn't you? If you had your kid that was a top end, swimmer or gymnastic, wouldn't you want to send him to the best school in the world to develop?
Yeah.
But does bigger mean better necessarily, or not to cut any of these?
No,
like
it
I was
doesn't
with
mean-
I was with big, I was with small. You know, my experiences with both. You know, I was very, very hard to work with. You
Yeah.
know, so my
You still are a little bit, you know,
but
working
Well,
with you.
some people will like to, you know, some people want to go to agencies maybe where they're not the biggest, but they know that they're the flagship for that year.
But to your
So
to your
everything
point
is
though,
on them.
but Joe, it doesn't the market dictate the contract? Like you're not gonna be 2-3 million off from a top big organization in negotiating a contract because the comparables
No.
are there. Right? So
No,
like
you
so
won't
like
be
at the end of the day, and I'm not taking anything away from CAA and OR Group and all these big, you know, I love what they do for their athletes. I'm not saying like they're huge, they're good.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, you know, for the new player that's looking, like specifically the 05s, the 06s, you know, in a year where they haven't been able to play hockey to market themselves to not only, you know, scouts but agents to help them get to the next level. You know, what really separates, you know, like why go a big route over a little route if your play is going to dictate? If you're elite, like you said, Joe, right? So is it more relationship building at that point, who you like, you know, because at the end of the day, you're going to have access because the GMs of the teams that you're negotiating with want your client if he's good enough to play, right? So you don't have a gatekeeper at that point. You have the you have the trophy. You have the trophy that they want.
Well, some people like to be with the best, right? Like, you know, they get the parents and the kids that say, you know what, you know, X or Y can do the same for me, but Y is Y. You know what I mean? And it happens. They, you know, this grandeurism, you know, I'm with the biggest, the best agent. And then you get some stories out there where you see agents that are with big agents, they leave and they go with their handler to someone else. You know what I mean? They didn't care about the big agent because they know that they trusted their handler. They're going to get top money so they can go wherever they want.
And
you know what I mean? Like David could pick me up out of the street and say, you come with me. I'm going to make you $1 million a year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't got to do anything. He's basically going to say, okay, you know, Ken Holland, you know what? Give me my $13 million a year. And this guy here is going to be my agent. Pay him 4%.
And to your point, Joe, you know, these big agencies started small.
Yeah.
Right? Like so like who's to say that Driven Sports or another smaller boutique firm won't be the next OR Group?
For sure.
Or the next CAA, right? All it takes is to be right once.
Be
right
right
place,
once,
right
get one stud, and then that stud, other people lure to him. They want to be part of that group, and it happens. Listen, if you got a top guy and he's playing, you know, he's MVP in the OHL and he's sitting beside a rookie that's with X agency and he's with Y, he says, hey, you want to come for a skate? You want to go to California for a free week? You know, it doesn't take much to lure that kid from you to someone else. You know, guys, look at that. You hope that you have loyal parents, loyal kids. Is it part of the game? Yeah, it happens.
Part of the game.
It happens. It's part of the game. And you know what? You get guys out there that, you know, the bigger guys are going to be around the elites because they know that if you stay away from them for a couple of weeks, who knows who's going to be trying to poach, right? Who's going to be knocking. You know, I'm not too many guys go after my guys, but I've had many situations where, you know, I've lost some guys and people are constantly calling them and trying to take them. And, you know, they stay with me. Thank God they've been loyal. And I'm, you know, middle, bottom rung, you know, it's
a dog-eat-dog world, it sounds like. It's
dog-eat-dog world for sure.
Very, very. But you know what? The big guys, the Newports, the Ors, the Bressons, the CAAs, the IMGs, they got big, like you said, for a reason. And you're right. Jim Bezos sold books out of his garage, and now he's worth $200 billion.
There you go.
Started from the bottom, now he's there, and hopefully we get there as well.
Before wrapping up, you know, second year in a row, they just canceled the Memorial Cup. You're kind of, like you said, in the juniors, minors ranks. How important is that tournament to, you know, yourself as an advisor for, you know, to get eyes on your clients and stuff? Is it more, you know, the whole season kind of thing, or are there a lot of, you know, scouts from the NHL level or pro level really honing in on that tournament?
Well, listen, 95% of what happens to a kid at the NHL, his eligibility year, happens during the season. You know, if they get the chance to make it to the Mem Cup, because remember, you only got one team from each league, and then you got the host there. So you're lucky if you might have maybe from the OHL. If you got one team at the Mem Cup, you're lucky if you might have 4 or 5 people that are draft eligible from that team. So there's not too many players that could actually play in the Mem Cup in Ontario that would be eligible for the draft. It always adds, because if you're playing against top teams from other part of the country and you do well, it shows that you know, it's not just the 9 to 5 teams that you play every day that you can do well against. You can do well against anybody. So any further exposure is good, but be careful. There's also the other side where, you know, you might get exposed, where all of a sudden you go against top guys and it's like, that's what might happen, right? You know, you're
your card gets bold.
Yeah, and it happens. You've seen it, junior to the U.S. You've seen it, you know, the one example too. You know, the year of Chikrin and Matthews. You know, they were both, Matthews' late birthday in '97. They were 1 and 1A at the beginning of the year, and Chikrin's an all-world player. Loved him. Played minor, came up all-world, and he was 1 and 1A. And then unfortunately, a couple injuries, this and that. Matthews lighting it up out there, and you know, one goes first and the other one goes 16th. You know, not that one got exposed, but one was playing more of an NHL pro style type game day in and day out, and the other one wasn't. You know, in all due fairness, Matthews is still elite of elite. But you know, with Chikrin, and he's coming around. He's got 30, 35 points. He's developing as a defenseman. It takes time.
Really
but there's
good.
a guy that, you know, everybody would have thought was top 2, top 3 at the beginning of the year.
For sure.
Right. And remember, these are my personal opinions, and sometimes it's
for sure.
Like you read and this is what you see. But you know, and Chikrin's coming around, and you know, he may be like even Hedman. Hedman was supposed to be number 1 overall, and then you know, Tavares, and now, you know, so if you had to ask, who would you rather have?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good.
You know,
that's a.
At the time, 5 years ago, Tavares, but now Hedman looks like he's kind of.
Tavares is still Tavares, bro. He's a hell of a leader.
And then one last thing, we're gonna wrap this up because when I called you earlier, I was like, you know, we usually talk about stuff for 45 minutes. He goes, that's a long time. Joe, we already went past an hour, so you know when we're talking. No, it's fine, but when we're talking hockey, this is what we do, right? This is kind of what happens.
We get lost.
But any, without naming names, any horror stories dealing with an organization or a team or a phone call or a GM when, you know, maybe a decommit last minute to a player, anything like that you have a story to tell us? Or,
you know what? There's not really any horror stories. Like there's, you know, 20 OHL teams, and you know, I kind of deal with most of them. There's about 2 or 3 that, you know, whatever, it is what it is. They wouldn't know you from today and tomorrow. And then there's some that, you know, I've had instances in the past where, you know, one of my players leave, and then I think, oh, these guys are never going to deal with me. And then all of a sudden they sign 3 of my guys. It's business. That's all it is. And they understand that we're dealing with young kids, and sometimes them and their parents, and they have issues. They want to get traded. Some are very giving. Some are not. Some are more run like NHL teams. Some are not. Overall, it's a very good league. It's run properly. Horror stories, you know what?
And our producer actually just wrote on the screen, name names. It gets juicier if you give us a good name. But you don't have to.
You know what? People say to me, he says, do you work for Flint? Because a lot of your guys sign with Flint. And you know what? Listen, the Newport guys, they used to send a lot of their guys to Saginaw, to Flint and all that, because they send them where they're going to play.
I wish IMG sent me to the London Knights.
You know, be careful. Everybody wants to go to London Knights, but you know what? You might not play for the first year or 2.
Yeah.
I would have played, Joe. I was a player. I would have played. Don't you worry.
There you go. So, you know what? I don't mind. The first thing I ask the kid is, do you have any, you know, reservations on teams you want to play, you don't want to play? And I hope I get one answer. You know, they tell me, I don't care where I go. And that's what you want to hear. If you want to play Neo, never mind D1, you just want to hear, I don't care where I go, I want to play. That's it, because that's good character. You know, we got kids that, you know, grow up in certain areas where they think they're influential and resourceful, and they go play in the States. You know what I mean? I got a lot of Vaughan kids, areas up there where, you know, they might say, I don't want to go there because I don't want to cross the border. I don't want to go play over there. Flint, you know, water problem, this and that. And they treat their kids second to none. Yeah. Erie, Saginaw, these are great locations. A lot of Ontario kids, you know, I got kids that are, you know, in great locations. You know, they might not get all the perks, but, you know, you offset, you know, location for maybe perks. And the American teams, they got to do a little bit more to try to lure the Canadian kids and the Ontario kids because they're, over the border and it's harder to watch, harder for the parents to go see. But I don't have a problem with any team. Have I had any really issues? You might have some issues with some scouts, like you don't see eye to eye. And remember, we have certain kids that we can try and recruit and represent, and they might not be the best because you don't have a shot at the best, or they're already taken. So we got to work with that. And you know what? We look at the long picture. OHL teams want kids that could step in the next year or two. They're ready. For us, like they said, we don't want to draft a kid with a beard because he's already, plateaued. We want kids to look at 3-4 years down the road where they're going to be. Now, McDavid is a McDavid, but you get other kids, we get kids that are 7th, 8th, 13th round kid. Look at Sorelli, never got drafted. And if you had to do the 97 draft again right now, where do you think that kid goes?
Yeah. Stanley Cup winner.
And he was
Memorial Cup winner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mem Cup MVP, Memorial Cup.
Yep.
Hell of a player.
Cup.
Hell of a player.
Hell of a player for sure.
And no disrespect, I just want to would have loved to be drafted by London, but Belleville, the Vaughn family treated me very well. So I just wanted to say that. Love Belleville. Love that
Belleville's
town.
great.
I
The
wish
coach
they still had. Oh,
Listen.
everybody was great there. I was a young punk when I was there, and my apologies.
You know what? If you're a good person, anytime you contact a GM, a scout, they get back to you. That's all you look for is communication and transparency. If there's any issues, I like to tackle it one-on-one. I don't like to hear it from other people. Have I had some run-ins in the past? Yes. Do you wish that you did something differently sometimes? Yes. But remember, we're thinking in the best interest of the kids. And that's the number one rule. We have to play with the teams, and we have to be on board with them because we got to work with them. We don't want it to be one-sided, but we also have to, think in the best interest of the kids, because when you talk to the parents and say, we're going to help you, that's a goal. It's not just, smoke.
Well, Joe, thanks for Joe Shoes. Thanks for joining us. So where can we find you? Any website or email? Where can we tell our viewers to, look for your agency?
Do you want paparazzi or do you not?
Yeah,
do you want fan mail or do you not want fan mail?
Listen, at the end of the day, I'd like to try to help everybody, but you can only help so many because, you get saturated and there's a lot of work. Driven Sports Group, if you're interested, you can always reach out to them. And Jason gets a lot of calls from parents wanting us to look at their kids for representation. At the end of the day, if your kid can play, they will have a lot of guys on them right from the onset. Some kids develop later, which, I'd love to get in. And I watch midget hockey. I watch a lot of midget hockey, and guys grew, some kids delay. I got a couple of kids playing in the OHL that signed contracts after a year midget. I have an 03 kid that is supposed to be playing with the OHL, and he's gone through the roof. He's an NHL eligible draft, dynamic player. And this is a kid that went, 13th round in the OHL draft. Played on the bottom team, but had a ton of skill, and he just grew a little bit. And that, those are the great stories. Great family, great kid, and I want to see it. At the end of the day, I want to see this kid play, and not just him, anybody else I have, because they're all great people. But at the Driven Sports Group, if you want to get in touch, call. Hopefully, it's something nice. Don't call and complain. And hopefully I didn't say anything today that kind of.
No, you were great, Joe.
He's all right.
We do have thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Joe.
We do have a lot of time on our hands, but I guess the wife's okay right now because you're not really doing the 40 hours.
Yeah, if you need me to stay on, I'm good. Yeah.
So we have another segment, penalty or part of the game. It's kind of our anchor of our show. I hope you'll stick around for that.
Yeah, please. If you don't mind, I got nothing else to do.
All right, let's do it. So, penalty or part
of the game. Let's go, Joe. Penalty or part of the game.
So, we have a player advisor slash agent on the show today. So, I thought a great penalty or part of the game.
You often think.
Yeah, I come up with some good stuff, I think, sometimes.
Every now and again.
I think we're going to do penalty or part of the game, salary cap.
Ooh.
So, you know, the NHL has a hard cap.
Yep.
And I want kind of our takes. Rain and I usually don't agree. We always have something different.
Usually don't.
Almost every episode we've gone against each other. But
that's because you're always wrong.
I don't know about that. Do you want to go first on whether the salary cap is part of the game or penalty, or do you kind of want to be the deciding factor between him and I?
I can go first. I don't have a problem.
Salary cap. Yes.
You're asking, should there be a salary cap?
Yeah. Is it part of the game or is it a penalty to you? What do you think?
I think it's part of the game. And the only reason why is because you do have a lot of teams that have a lot more resources than the other. Now, in saying that, these teams have had these resources for so many years and they haven't got anything accomplished. It's not just money that'll bring you championships. It's, evaluators, GMs, scouts. But I think if you have a cap, there's the even playing field. Now, a lot of people are going to scream at me because I'm an advisor saying there should not be cap because we should make as much money as possible.
True. True.
So you know what? As an agent, strictly agent penalty. As a hockey fan, part of the game.
Wow. I'm thrown for a loop there. Wow. I thought for sure you were going to say penalty, but that's interesting. I like it. I'm
going to defer to you.
I was going to say, usually he goes first, so
I'm going to go last.
He's actually deferring to me.
I'm deferring to you.
Which is a good thing, because to me, salary cap is a major penalty. I'm talking, game misconduct. Because here's the thing. I feel like, if a team drafts well, if a team has built their players and stuff, after a certain amount of time, if they don't get the job done, if they don't win a cup within that, period of time, contracts go 3-4 years, especially, first round picks, they start kicking in. You got to sign him after a few years. If you don't get the job done, that team gets dismantled because you can't afford to keep all these players that you drafted, if you drafted well, right? For instance, the team like the Chicago Blackhawks, they won, 4 Stanley Cups?
3.
3?
3.
Was it 3?
3.
I thought it was 4. So 3 Stanley Cups. But, that was kind of the last, dynasty. Obviously, Pittsburgh's still up there, right? But
Pittsburgh went back to back.
Well, the only reason Pittsburgh's able to do that is because they have a guy like Crosby taking less money. He's the 27th highest paid player in the NHL, which is ridiculous to me. And luckily, he has a weird thing with the number 87 because his contract is 8.7, and he's good with that. Malkin makes more than him. Malkin's making, 9.5 or whatever. Right. To me, it's ridiculous that players like have to do that, just to keep their team together. And one other thing about it, too, to me, that kind of, it's upsetting. I'm a big Leaf fan, right? We just signed a lot of big contracts. And I hate to say it, but some guys start getting looked at differently because they're not playing up into their money. They're not worth what they're being paid.
Isn't that subjective, though?
No, it's not subjective because, I'm going to call names out. John Tavares. The guy's making $12 million a year, all right? He had a great season the one year, but what have we done in the playoffs? Johnny T's a no-show. And honestly, no knock on him. I want players to, like you said, I want players to get paid. I want to see them make all the big bucks, which is why I think a salary cap's a penalty. But now that there's a salary cap, and, the team I cheer for, I see our captain making all the money in the world and not really, playing up to expectation. I start, looking at him differently. And I don't like doing that, but I'm human. And I think he's overpaid, And I just feel like, for the players' sake, I get what you're saying, Joe, the competitive balance and stuff, like a team like the Leafs, obviously, they could go out and buy all the players they want. I don't know why they didn't do that in the early 2000s or in the 90s, but, you know, a team like Arizona might miss out on a lot of players because the Leafs are paying more. And it's almost like, you know, agencies, you know, you go with the more known agency who's paying more and stuff. But I just think it's a penalty. Get the players paid. I'm sick of this, you know, a guy in the MLB batting 80, way below the Mendoza line, you know, making more than Ovechkin. And the guy, you know, bats 4 times a game, doesn't even play the field anymore. And he makes more money, you know. Get these guys paid. I'm done with this. And maybe the Leafs will win a couple cups if they get rid of the salary cap.
So I'm going to speak for, I think, majority of our audience. You confused the hell out of me with that answer. First you're saying it's a penalty, pay the players. Then you're chopping up my man, Johnny T, saying that we paid him too much. To your point, if it was a penalty and there was no salary cap, when Johnny T was a free agent, he could have made $15 to $20 million after what he did in New York Islanders. And then what would you be saying if the Leafs were able to give him $20 million a year and he's having the season that you think is a failure? I just looked at his stats today, and he's just under a point a game. To Joe's point, do you know how hard it is to play in the NHL?
Yes.
Do you know how hard it is to be the captain of an original 6 team with the weight on your shoulders day in and day out? Fortunately for Johnny T, we don't have the media because of this pandemic that we're in, and he doesn't have to deal with all that limelight right now. But lay off my boy. I think as a former player, it's also a penalty. I want to get paid what the market will pay me. And it's really as simple as that. But I understand, I'm doing the double answer, penalty or part of the game. It's also a part of the game because to your point, there are contracts, not Johnny T's, that people don't live up to. So I'm thankful for situations like those that we have a salary cap because there's lots of players that deserve more money. You look at Pasternak, right? After the year that he had, the contract that he's on, I mean, that guy's a stud, right? And it's because of the salary cap that you get kind of compared to, like, I would imagine, like, that's how the numbers work, right? You have a salary cap and you have to divvy up the pie. You have to weigh, you know, okay, the McDavids and the Dreisaitl's, okay, that's 50% of the salary cap because that's 50% of my offense. And then I have to divide, you know, the other 50% of this cap amongst, what, 20 other players?
So you think it's right that Crosby has to go and take 8.7?
No, Crosby made
because
a
he'd
decision.
rather win.
No, Crosby did not have to take 8.7. And I have no Sid, love Sid, and that guy, to Joe's point, is just a worker. Work his whole career
And he
on
likes
top
winning.
on top of being the most skilled and all that stuff. Crosby, love you, Crosby. What's up? Holler at your boy. But he chose because he wanted to win championships, because he's going to make money on the back end. Joe, don't you get endorsement deals for the elite?
I'm talking salary. We're not talking endorsement.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Salary.
He didn't have
when
to.
he signed, Britt, when he signed, you know, he signed a 10-year deal. You know, at that time, I think he was making the same percentage of the cap as McDavid signed for. So at that time, remember, 10 years at 8.7, you can't look at it now that he's less than these other guys because he's been making for so many years a lot more than other guys were. You know, you had guys sign out for $5-6 million, Taylor Hall originally, or you had the Goudreau's, Monahans, you know, and then Marner and the Leafs, they come up a little bit higher. You know, Dubas has a different way of doing things. You know, I'd love for them to make $20 million a year. The only problem is there's no money in Canada compared to the other 3 big sports. You know, you get it like the NFL, before they even open the doors, they're making $300 million each before they even open the doors. And if they have a cap of $180 million, the owners are pocketing $120 million right off the bat just from TV money. So they can do what they want. Jerry Jones, he could spend $2 billion in a stadium. Because they get all this money through gambling sites, through streaming, public networks, private networks. You know, the Yankees, Yes Network, they're probably making $500 million a year just in TV money. So they could do whatever they want. They don't mind paying the luxury taxes. But you get at the NHL, you can't, because if you have teams like Toronto, the Rangers, LA spending $110 million, taking all the big players, what are the other teams going to do? So they remember when they brought out the salary cap, you remember what the ceiling was?
No.
$39 million.
Jeez.
39. Now The base is, I think, I don't know, 60 million.
Yeah.
So teams have to make some deals just to get to the base. So when it came in, and I know it was a long time ago, but it was $39 million. And that's the unfortunate thing is there's no money. You know, you get what was it, $500 million over 5 years from Sportsnet or whatever it was. It was something like that, $500 million a year. You got 30 teams, so they were getting $16 million a year. When pro sports in the States are making $300, $400, $500 million each. There's a big difference. So that's why Canadian hockey, you know, at the end of the day, the owners, they have millions and millions from running other businesses. For them, it's a toy. You think they're going to say, yeah, let me lose $100 million here every year. It's not going to happen. There's got to be checks and balances. And with Crosby, you know, like even McDavid, you know, he took 12.5 back then, supposedly to help Edmonton sign other guys. And, you know, back then when Draisaitl signed, everybody said, oh my God, what a mistake. You're giving that guy $9 million, 9.5.
9.5.
You think he's worth 9.5 right now?
He's worth more.
There you go. You know,
that's the thing. I think they're all worth more, but I get what you're saying as well. And I must say, this segment threw me for a crazy loop because I think we ended up agreeing. We said it was a penalty. You were kind of wishy-washy. And the player advisor said it's part of the game. So that's how you know Joe is actually here for the game and not for himself. And that's why Joe Shoes is who he is. And Joe, thank you so much for coming on our show, man.
Joey, you're
listen,
the man.
I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't ruffle any feathers out there. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No, you did.
Just for acknowledging me.
No, man, you did great. And please come back. You know, we have some time on our hands, so we want to know.
But only when you get that diamond in the rough. Come back when you get the stud, get our ratings up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm trying, and I'm hoping it's coming soon.
I'm sure you have them already in your stable.
Yeah. You know what? Like I said, it's a matter of realism. We'd love to get the #1 guys, but unfortunately, sometimes it's better to be realist than delusional.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You know, like I said, it's a nice passion. I put in a lot of time and effort and work, and I think that's the difference between the bigger agencies too. It's a full-time thing. You have to spend full-time hours. You can't just do this 5-10 hours. I remember 3-4 years ago, there was probably 20 new agencies that popped out of nowhere. You see all these jackets all over the place. They were just trying to get kids. They thought that they could make a lot of money, but when you do the numbers, it's so limited out there. And if you get one guy a year that could sign a second contract, it doesn't seem like much for the big boys, but it's enough every year. After 10 years, you got 10 people in the NHL. It's not bad. And the way the salaries are going, they're getting up there. But it's still, it's unfortunate that it's still way behind in the other three. Because it's more a Canadian game. It's becoming an American game. But until you get the big American companies that sponsor, we'll never be close to this.
There's a start, ESPN, right? So they're kind of making moves, but, it is what it is. Hopefully, like you said, hockey, because to us Canadians, you know what hockey is. It's our life. So
it's everything.
Hopefully soon enough we're up there battling. But once again, Joe Shoes, everyone, thank you so much. And, we'll touch base, man. Appreciate your time.
When he's on our show next, I'll get him those Yeezys.
Yeah, we'll get you some.
We'll get you some Yeezys.
The Yeezy shoes.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Oh, these are hot, but that was awesome.
So I've come to realize that we're never, ever, ever going to be a 45-minute podcast.
Never.
Like, you don't shut up, I don't shut up, and we get great guests.
Yeah, and
that
Joe,
don't shut up.
But we don't want him to shut up because that was so educational, not only to us but our viewers.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
And like kind of what I said at the end, I meant that. Like that, it's a fun segment, penalty or part of the game.
Yep.
But for Joe to say part of the game, even though it's in the best interest
to say
of,
penalty. Well, and that's why he put on his agent hat.
For sure.
Penalty,
he brought that up as well. But, that to me was super, enlightening
because we're all people, right?
Exactly.
And we're all fans of the game.
And he's a fan of the game. He said it.
Exactly. And that's, I would much rather a more competitive product than have these, big markets buy up all the top players, because then how do smaller markets market their product if all the big boys are in the big markets, right? So then,
well, I'm biased. I'm a Leaf fan.
so am I. But you're chirping Johnny T, so I'm not touching you.
Wow.
But don't deserve $12 million. Give yourself a self clap.
But to my point about that is just that we could get more players defense.
Don't
if
agree.
he takes less money.
Nope. Disagree with you. So would my son, Johnny T, or my son's favorite player with Mitch Marner.
So
and
is
Matthews.
Joe like the real life Jerry Maguire? You know, like, because it was more of a personal relationship with him. Like he said, you know, his wife's asking him, 40 hours.
So who's his Rod Tidwell?
Where's your,
Who's his Cuba Gooding Jr.?
But that's what she's at. Where's your check?
Right.
He's doing this because he's putting in the work and the time. And, a lot of his answers were, educational for me to say, like, he wishes almost every player could have an advisor.
Yep.
So after a hard game,
have somebody to talk to.
Instead of going to your parents who could be hard.
And I remember when I played, and we should wrap this up. But I remember when I played, it was so cool to be one of the guys that had an agent, to be able to talk to after the game and get that feedback, because they're also giving you feedback that's relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to accomplish getting to the next level.
Absolutely.
And they're there to facilitate that, right? So getting that feedback from somebody who's invested in that sole purpose is to get you to the next level. To get that feedback is so impactful in the development of that player. So, agents, get out there and represent everybody.
For sure. And
so
players and parents.
Especially now with COVID.
Don't forget about the little guy.
100%. 100%.
It's almost like players playing on teams. Do you want to be, on the best team and maybe play the third line? Or do you want to be on a team that, is mid-pack and you're first line playing power play all the time? Right. So it's almost like the same with picking an agency. Possibly. Do you want to pick an agency that's top dogs and you're kind of like the fourth best, client?
Right.
Or do you want to be with a smaller agency that maybe you're the best?
Sounds like you're projecting something else right now. Anyways, guys.
Never.
Thank you so
I
much.
just thought,
Thank you so much.
Pretty great.
To our sponsors.
Sugo.
Pharaoh.
Yeah, Pharaoh. Hit those guys up. You'll love them.
Look them up.
And please subscribe to our channel.
Somewhere here.
It's here.
He's always saying it's over here.
You know what's
but
there?
Maybe I know exactly what's here because I do watch it. Maybe I'm pointing to this direction because I'd like to get some stuff on my side, because I find that oftentimes when it's on this side, you cut me out of the scene.
Well,
so it's all you.
Own Aces at the top. All our hockey schools and programs, and everyone's going through this, like we said at the beginning. We're all going through this together, but support the little guys, support local,
the little guys,
small businesses, and let's fight this pandemic together.
Head on.
Yeah.
Let's go. Stay safe.
Part of the game, baby. Let's go.